Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week is Lorenzo Emilitri from Loway, old-time friend of the open source community and my personal friend. Welcome, Lorenzo.
Oh, hi. Hi, everybody.
And I know you've been doing a lot over history, and many people in the community know you for Loway and the work with Asterisk. But could you give us a quick introduction about yourself and the company first?
Yes, I started Loway about 20 years ago, so that's quite a bit of time, because I had the impression that it would be quite easy to write something to basically gather statistics out of Asterisk for a contact center that I was providing software for. And what was supposed to be a couple of weeks of work ended up being like 20 years. So the planning was not really perfect, but it was a very nice ride. And so during the last 20 years, so what we did, we first built a very comprehensive reporting platform for Asterisk contact centers that we expanded to other platforms as well. So we have FreeSwitch and we have a number of other platforms that we can get our data from. And what happened in the last 10 years was that we moved it, I'd say most of it now, from being on-premise to being hosted. So we had a bit of a shift going from specific contact centers that were typically pure player contact centers that that had the knowledge and the willpower, let's say, to run a complex reporting because they needed complex reporting, versus going towards telcos that basically want to offer a reporting solution that is easy to use. It is rather friendly, I'd say. It is powerful when it needs to, and especially they want it cookie cutter so that basically everybody gets something that is very specific for their infrastructure. They don't have to learn much. And so this is something that we've seen is working pretty well. And in the last 2-3 years of my life, I spent a lot of time trying to bring Microsoft Teams on top of all this. Well, I used to work in consulting, like before this life, over 20 years ago, and we were one of the large ones, and we were basically a Microsoft shop. So when I started working outside of that, one of the things that I put in as a rule was no Microsoft, because my experience was, let's say, suboptimal. So I was quite tired of it. In the last 20 years, things have changed quite a bit. And one of the things that have changed was the first is that Microsoft has basically improved a bit on what they do. And the other thing was that Microsoft Teams has become a very powerful and very used communication platform, not just as a chat, as it basically started, but also as a complete telephony offering that is basically baked in with the rest of Teams, and is, while of course coming from the PBX side of things, you say there are a lot of differences and shortcomings, and maybe it's not perfect, but is very often good enough for a variety of businesses that basically have everything else running on Teams and are linked, use Teams as their central hub. So having telephony in the same place or in the same offering is a very compelling proposition. And what we realized a few years ago was that we had some customers that were migrating to Teams, and were very, how can I say, unimpressed, maybe, to be polite, in terms of the kind of reporting that they would get in order to even basic reporting like who called whom, or when was this call received, because Teams was thinking that basically the telephony side looks a lot like something that was bolted on and that was not designed around. So there are a number of shortcomings in the way they handle the telephony data. One of which, for example, is that if there is a lost call, so you get an incoming call from PSTN and nobody picks it up, in terms of Teams, if a call was lost, it never existed. I mean, it's a philosophical. I'm sure there is a philosophical implications that we could discuss. But usually, people in telcos like to know that there was an incoming call that was not answered, especially if it went on a queue, versus the call never. What is the sound of of one single of one hand clapping? So what is the sound of a call that where nobody's speaking? And yes, it's it's a very much Zen-like, but maybe people want to know about the fact that we are losing calls. So there are a number of things that are quite strange from a telephony point of view, for someone coming from telephony. But on the other hand, reporting is really the reporting that is baked in was really not very good. So we thought that we could do something in terms of making life easier for people that are running telephony and especially contact centers on Teams.
Yeah,
Because
Teams. I didn't know Teams had an integrated contact center. I'll be honest. That's
it's not really an integrated contact center. They basically get auto attendants, and that can, of course, synthesize voice. And so you can do things like want to go to voicemail. You can just say things, and very often it understands. Or which department do you want to go to? It's I want to speak to sales, and so it understands that it needs to route you to the right place. And they get a very basic queue that is a queue. So it's very often enough to handle simple scenarios. I'd say that the big thing that is missing is that they don't offer real-time data out of it. So if there was a real-time data coming out of it, it would be, I'd say, enough in my experience for maybe 95% of people actually running contact centers out there, because everything else could be built on top of it. As they do not offer a real-time feed, what you get is that you get mostly information about calls that still has to be transformed and retrofitted against a system like ours that was built instead to receive a real-time feed. So the engineering side of this was interesting. And it was also interesting because in the true Microsoft way, and this has not changed much in the last 20 years, everything is documented in a very accurate way, but that's basically useless. Because once you know what every single field means, and the 27 options that you could see in a specific field, what you don't get is why. What does it mean when one field is set this way versus this other way? So this is something that you basically have to, how can I say, retro engineer. You have to make a lot of trial and error and try and understand what it means. Plus, it's the hard thing is that compared to running versus a local PBX of sort, is that when you upgrade a local PBX, you know that you're upgrading, so you're expecting things could be different. If you run coupled to a system that you don't control, you basically get records, you get information out of it. But when it changes, it's very often changes. That doesn't change everything at once. So maybe likely they're upgrading some clusters first. So you start seeing data that is slightly different, and you don't really, and there is no documentation or anything on why this is changing and why this is like this on a customer and like that on the other customer. So it was an interesting ride. So
I have the same experience with the Teams documentation. You can do a lot of things with Teams. It's just they almost try to consciously make you not be able to find things. It's weird. It's cool. So, well, you mentioned you were working through this. You had performance requirements, and it was quite complicated. And so I know you've used something that's very interesting to build this. So what environment was used to build the solution?
Well, we went with Elixir. So we went with Erlang basically, because we thought that we historically have been a Java shop. So I spent a lot of my life optimizing things on the JVM. And so going somewhere else was something that we didn't really take lightly, because we have a lot of experience on the JVM side of things. The main reason why we went for Elixir was there were two big drivers. The first was that Elixir is built around it's not built around performance, so it's not exceedingly performant in any sense. But what we had to do was basically to forward and feed forward a number of messages and transform them. So performance was not, we're not computing or doing real-time
Yeah,
analytics.
it's almost only I/O at that point.
Exactly, it's I/O. What matters is that the system is extremely reliable, and you can really rely on it. Plus, you can scale it out, and this is something that basically the only game in town where you have a virtual machine that considers a cluster as its unit of working, and not just one VM that you may connect in a number of ways to others, is the Erlang virtual machine. And this was interesting because what we wanted to do was to have a system where we could switch off and switch on different parts at different times. So, for example, if one of the servers dies, the system basically keeps on working. It realizes that one of the members of the clusters have left, and then it will basically route around the issue, and the other things that would that were present on that machine would be restarted on the rest of the cluster. This is something that we experimented with in Java land using Kafka, because we have like around 2018 we introduced a Kafka stream in order to basically process data coming from some very big customers of ours, where we needed to have something that was very reliable. And Kafka has this interesting thing that basically you get a group of readers. So it's going to tell you that this stream is partitioned into, I don't know, 16 slices. And as you belong to this group, so you and I, we belong to the same group, and there are two people belonging to the same group of readers. The system Kafka is going to tell you you're reading from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm reading from 9 to 16, for example. If you leave, I get a message from Kafka that says, hey, from now on, you are supposed to work on all of 16 of them. If, or on the other hand, if we are lagging behind because we need more power, we can add a new reader to Kafka and to the Kafka group, and Kafka will say, hey, Luca, you it's 1 to 7, Lorenzo is 8 to 14, and the other reader is the remaining ones. And this happens. This is a part of the environment. So this was interesting, but in this case, Kafka was overkill, and then in any case, once you have you can read on specific specific topics, you still have the problem of talking to producing data, sending data, talking to other systems that are located elsewhere. So this was a part of the solution. In Erlang, this is way more natural because the system was built around this. Plus, Erlang was built around the idea of controlling telephony. So it is quite a natural fit in terms of doing things, a lot of small things, instead of doing something that is intensive in terms of CPU, in terms of data processing, but it's just split into a few big streams, let's say. So this was interesting in terms of designing a system where we say we have a number of operators that run a number of customers, and we can switch them on and off, and we can move them between machines. And if something bad happens, the system basically takes over and realizes that one of the parts of the cluster is missing, and just restarts the cluster in a different place. So this part of the experience was pretty good. The other thing that Erlang has that I like quite a lot, that is similar, maybe even better than the one that you get on the JVM, is inspectability. meaning
Oh
that
yeah.
everything is built around the fact that you can just look at it. So you can just deserialize everything, and you can connect with a remote shell, and basically poke around the system to see what is happening. So this is of course it's expensive, but in our case, I don't really care about the total performance. I care more about the fact that it is easy basically to work with.
And even the
I
debugger is great. Like just the Elixir slash Erlang VM debugger is just good. It's just great.
No, see, it's pretty good. And the big thing that left me, I mean, I bought a book on Erlang in around
Oh really?
2012 or something. Yes, and the result of my book of Erlang is the library that we use for the dialer. The dialer started in 2012, so I guess the library was in 2010, because the ideas of Erlang were very good, but the language was very bad. So it's
I've used Erlang for years back
no.
in working in pure telcos. It's not great. Like you have to understand it. I'm very happy to hear that some people are still using it. But yeah, I think Elixir at this point has essentially taken over.
Exactly. And this is interesting because the relationship between Elixir and Erlang is, I mean, I would have expected it to be the old Erlang people saying, "Hey, these are the new kids.
Mhm.
We don't care about them. They are just playing around." I mean, you're the C guy versus the Python. Hey, I did a tutorial in Python. Okay, so they say, "Yeah, sure, kid. Okay, don't worry about this." But instead, I see that there is a lot of collaboration because, in a sense, um, I don't think this is felt as threatening to the airline ecosystem. It's felt as empowering. So a lot of people are coming in, a lot of things are being developed, and in a sense, Elixir is not outside of Erlang, because you know
Oh,
it's basically compiled by Erlang. It's just different from Tend for the Erlang compiler. So there is no difference once things are physically in, and everything is interoperable. So I mean, I see that there is a community that is friendly on both hands. Of course, doing Erlang by hand is not. I really didn't like it, so I got a number of ideas and brought them to the JVM. Like this was a lot of time ago, and I got a book. I still a guy that likes books on Elixir. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I didn't like it so much because I was comparing it to, in terms of a language, I was comparing it to Clojure. That is, so it looked like a very, very light version of it. But you know, some things look like a copy that was very shallow. So the things look like, but they are not really deep, are not that powerful. And instead, working with it, you realize that it's a pretty good language, meaning that it's simple, it's easy to use, it's pleasant to use. It has
it looks
very
almost like Ruby, which makes it even better because Ruby is the best language.
Yes, it looks like Ruby, and in fact, I believe that most of the people that are using Erlang now, that are using Elixir now, are coming from Ruby. People, so a lot of people are working and building basically web applications out of it
Yeah,
because
it's
the
very
language
good
is
at that. It's very good at that kind of performance. Honestly,
yes,
it
because
is.
it's for real-time things, it's perfect. And for things that are not really real-time, is the idea is that you go somewhere else. So you shell out, you use an NIF, or you just shell out a process and control a different process. I don't know, you launch FFmpeg and ask FFmpeg to do whatever it has to. You don't have to do it yourself. You just have to make sure when it dies, I restart it, or I pipe it information of what it needs to do. But this is not something that you need to concern yourself with. So it was,
Had you tried? Had you tried using the Java implementations like Akka or similar?
yes, we did. This was one of the options that we tried, but the big things that the big thing that have, and in general, it's not possible to do a one-to-one thing on the Java side of thing is because Java does not really have the concept of canceling a process. So you can ask
Okay, yeah,
for a thread,
right.
but to be shut down, but it has no idea of okay, I just kill something and everything else will automatically be killed and will be terminated like you do on the Erlang side of things.
Yeah,
So
because
on Java
supervision
you have
tree
to
is
be
the
exactly, and but it's not just the supervision tree. Is the idea is that when you cancel something, everything is like cleaned up, so you
yeah,
don't have to worry about it. So you have to worry if something is canceled where you don't expect it, so you're losing data, of course. But in general, it's when you cancel something, it's canceled. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about I left some files open that will be collected I don't know when, and because everything will just be hard terminated and will thrown away. So it's this works pretty well. And so you cannot have the same thing on the Java side. And again, the putting together when you have a library in Ruby or in Ruby in Elixir or in Erlang, it's meant to work in such an environment. On the Java side, it's not. So typically, it's you have to think if it's worth it or not. We did some experimenting with Kotlin, that is like a nice language in itself, but again, it lives on the JVM. So it's it's how can I say, the word it sees is basically one JVM, and then everything outside you have to build yourself. While the nice thing about the Erlang is that a node is a part of what you're doing. It's not something that is complete in itself. Of
So,
course,
going down that route, I know you've been doing a lot of work for telcos, not only just Asterisk, but bigger companies and bigger. You think Elixir has a place in that side of work specifically? Like, since telcos have a lot more input output to handle, etc., is Elixir helping QueueMetrics grow towards that goal? Is it something that you see going forward in the near future?
I think that the more than the QueueMetrics side of things, what I think is that Elixir has Elixir and Erlang in general could be very interesting for large-scale real-time data processing, because this is something that it was that it was built to do. So things like what we work on typically is sending logs or sending events, and this is something where it really suits the kind of environment that we have. So I think this is interesting because in what we do typically when you have a telco, they have they very often they developed the infrastructure in house. So they started from some building blocks that were available. There could be some Asterisk, some pre-switch, some other things, and then they found a way to cluster them together, and they found a way to do the billing, and they found a way to. So they built a layer of software on top of the voids side of things, and we interface with that layer of software. So having something that can be written quickly, easily, can be tested easily, that we can trust, that is able to that won't choke because it has too many in-flight requests or anything like that, is and can be deployed very quickly and inspected. I think it's useful because typically we write an integration layer that I mean, all of them are very much alike, but all of them are different because everybody gets their own specific request authorization, has some different ways on the way they map queues to or customers to servers. So we have to basically work around all these differences, and this is something that if we can put together and we can develop very quickly is a big win for us. So this is something that I believe is interesting. The other thing that I think could be interesting is and I'm starting to see some things that will be interesting for our industry, because we're starting to see WebRTC being used on Erlang. There is a project
Oh,
called
for real?
yes, there is a project called Membrane. I think they had their first conference in Poland a few months ago, maybe October, November. I don't remember. And they are developing like I believe they built something like an SFU, and it's most of it is at least controllable on the Elixir side. And this is interesting because they basically are bridging the part between I'm developing a web application and I'm developing WebRTC. So the idea is that somebody that is able to do web application won't find it too hard to add voice and video to it.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know it was a project like that. I'll go check it out.
I
Hmm.
don't know about the I mean, I don't know how it is, if it's ready to be scaled out at signal wire at signal wire sizes or not. But it's definitely interesting because they're basically building a number of an interface to plug in different parts where you can do video transform, you can do mixing, you can do SFU, so you can that are quite easy, and is built around something that is quite familiar to people that are doing web development. So the idea is that if you want to develop something where you have a one-to-one chat or an application like the one that we are using now, where you basically get the people, compose them together, and get a stream out, and it should be quite easy to be implemented. I mean, I did some tests with it, and it was quite simple.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, Loway has been around for a while. QueueMetrics. I've heard of QueueMetrics ever since I started in the business.
Yeah, I
Not
think it's like 20
as
years.
not too many people know, I started with the consultancy too. I worked for 4 years for a subsidiary of Accenture, and at some point I was just building high throughput software, not related to it was financial stuff, not related to telephony. And I got dragged into telephony, and almost immediately I heard about QueueMetrics. So it's the product and Lower. They've been around for a while. So what's been the secret in staying relevant for all these years? Because there's other companies who've gone, they had 5 years of good business, then maybe went away a little, maybe came back. But how did you stay? Is it just staying up to date, learning new technology? What has worked for you?
I think that there are two sides here. The first is that I believe that in order to make something that is actually useful, you have to do something that other people don't want to do. So it's people will pay you if you do something that they really don't want to do. So that's going to be more expensive, or it's going to be a hassle. So this means that a lot of people want to write the new programming language, and a lot of them are very bright and very smart. Not many people want to make sure that the number of calls will tally even in the case when the PBX we started in the middle, and so you have thousands of regression cases that you want handled. So you test them and make sure that nothing happens even when the data is logged in a slightly different ways. So this is interesting from the point of view of a business, but on the other hand, it's how can I say, it's hard work, meaning that it's not really fun. I mean, if you are like me and you like the programming side of things, of course, you find pride in doing things right. So you're saying, not only I was able to shave off a few allocations here, not because anybody's going to like it and maybe nobody will ever notice, but I want to make sure what I do is, I mean, it's for me. I'm building something that makes me proud of it. The other thing is that you have to find a motivation because if you start saying, okay, I don't care, I just keep on piling up technical debt, or I don't. You may do things right, or may do things well, so and so, and nobody's ever going to notice this. It's important that you find motivation. For me, finding motivation is finding new technologies and trying to try to think about things that used not to be possible and are now possible. So, for example, in the last few years, there's been this explosion with AI that is pretty interesting, but it's interesting more than for what we do, because I don't think that we are going to adopt a large language model in order to do statistics on call records. It's interesting because it makes you think about other things that were not possible and could be done now. So it's and keeps your mind working. How can I say? So I believe that even learning new languages and experimenting with new technologies is important, because it keeps you get ideas, and sometimes you get ideas that there are things that when you look at them, they don't really look so good on paper, and then you start playing with them and you realize why they were good ideas. So it's I don't know, functional languages or immutable data structures that look terrible. It's the first time somebody talks about them, you say, no, it's not a good idea. And then you realize why they are, and it's worthwhile paying the price. So even if you do this in C, where you say this is not going to be like supported in any sense, it's the way you look at the problem that is interesting and makes it worthwhile to open the PC in the morning and open the compiler and say and write some code for the day. Of course, you have to like this, because it's if you don't really like the technical side, of course you won't really. it will be boring, or maybe you will be a totally different person from me, and you like, I don't know, the sales side of talking to people, and I don't. But yeah, in spite of my not really liking interaction with other humans, I will still be able to have a company that is still around and it's still working and it's still growing in terms of revenue. So it's I believe you have to find the thing that motivates you to stay relevant, of course.
Well, I mean, you've certainly managed to stay relevant, and I think you did a very good. I think you did a very good job at it. Like, again, you've been around for a while. It's been. One last question? Do you also support some cloud providers with QueueMetrics? So, say people
Yes.
have a call center that's cloud based.
Yes, well, I'd say that at the moment, the majority of what we do in terms of revenue is based out of cloud providers.
Oh, so last asterisk than it used
Yeah,
to be.
yeah, it's different, because what we see on the Asterisk side or on the PBX side is that we start seeing that big players still run their own PBX. So people that have 50, 100 agents or more still run their own PBX because they have IT, and they are able to do it, and they don't want to risk anything by being in somebody else's hands. But the majority of the small ones move to hosted, because the majority of people never enjoyed the fact that you had to set up a PBX connected to a trunk and all these funny things, and discover and learning SIP along the way. While you could say, okay, here's $20, $50, $100 a month. I click here and I get a number, I get a call, and somebody's going to pick it up. So this is something that in the last 5-10 years has been started to be really relevant. So for us, talking to this kind of provider is something that is now the majority of what we do.
Well, I mean, again, I think you're a great company, and I love what Loway has been doing for the last years. And I think it's a great. You're a great example of what you can achieve working within open source and then branching out to see what else the market offers. And I encourage everybody to check out your website. Go check out QueueMetrics. Check out Elixir. Do you have anything written up about use of Elixir anywhere? Blog posts or something like that?
Yes, I have. I did a presentation a couple of years ago about when we started working with Elixir. And so there is, I think that it was after a couple of years more, I'd say it was kind of relevant. So there were the things that we didn't really love at the time, I still think are not wonderful, but the things I found wonderful, I believe, are still relevant. So yes, there is a video of my presentation outside, but I'm going to get you the link.
Good, yeah. We'll add the link to the bottom of the video description so you can check it out. And well, then Lorenzo or Lances is your usual. People, yeah. I don't think anybody knows you're actually named Lorenzo, so it's good. It's good to let people know.
I appear as Lorenzo only as the three Lorenzos of Voice over IP.
Yeah, exactly. Which almost made me change my name at one point. Like I'm the only one not named Lorenzo. That's just wrong. So
exactly.
I need to do something about it. Well, thank you very much, Lorenzo, for joining us today. And for the audience, guys, go check out Loway. Go check out the website. We'll put a link to Lorenzo's description at the bottom of the video. And well, thank you very much, Lorenzo.
Thank you. Bye.
Rest of people, see you next week. Goodbye.